Hello, my Degens. Welcome to Dynasty Degens on Dynatize. So, new platform, same faces, having fun with it. We are happy to be joined by one of the goats of the industry, somebody that I can never have enough of on the show. He is a pleasure, as always, Mr. Matt Waldman. Matt, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. It's nice to be on again, and I appreciate the warm welcome, and we should have a good time. I mean, we're about to get into the thick of it.
Yeah, honestly, one of the best guests to have on before the thick of it. We're starting the season off. We are getting into player values. We're talking about people that are going to boost up, that are going to fall out. It's just a fun time, man. And it's really, we have the team layout. We have the rookies in. We have kind of the OCs, establishing themselves. And obviously depth charts are still playing out a little bit. But for the most part, we have an idea of, the team layout and what we're going to be looking at, schedule, everything like that. So it's a fun time to just break these players down and really go into it. Before we get into that, Chris, how you doing, brother?
Oh, man, living the dream here. Raced home from my kid's football practice. Got the exhibition season on in the background. I mean, is there any better time other than opening night? I mean, this is just football heaven here. I'm loving it. And Matt being here, this is just, let's get to it. Let's get going.
Yeah. And on the thumbnail, I dropped, sophomore year guys. So I want to open it up with the second year guys. And, I know Matt is obviously the RSP is definitely one of the best pieces of rookie knowledge that you can get your hands on. And he does do deep dives in all these rookies. So I think they're really fun to go back and visit, especially with somebody like you, brothers. So, I mean, ideally, we open it up with some hot names. So players that the Dynasty community has been in on and really just like pumping up a little bit. And I want to know what side of the fence you land on, because I am a Luther Burden guy. Chris is an anti-Luther Burden guy, and I need you to settle this for me right in the middle. I know where you're going to go. I think I know where you're going to go.
I know too. I watched the F-It show.
Yeah. But Matt, are you on Luther Burden year 2? And let's kind of get into that. And I want to open up the floor to you and kind of pick your brain about Luther Burden year 2.
Sure. I mean, I think the thing about Luther Burden is that it was a hard player to scout for a lot of people, at least in college, because they saw him used in a limited way. A lot of it was screens, RPOs, crossing routes. And then when you got a chance to see him work downfield, at least when you're looking at everything as a whole, he didn't have a very good quarterback. But when you look at the mechanics of how a player runs a route, how well he can uncover downfield and when the ball's in the air, how well he can uncover in a zone where there's multiple defenders there so that he can work open with his quarterback and show that he understands the defense and that he's on the same page with the quarterback. And then what he can do after the catch. His game's really strong. Are you looking at him as a Malik Neighbors, Odell Beckham Jr. type route runner at this stage of his game? No. But at the same time, is he as far away as people think he is, that he's like some sort of gadget player like Mecole Hardman? Absolutely not. He's not that at all. Mecole Hardman couldn't run routes at a high level, didn't really understand how to uncover all the time. Also had kind of allergic reactions to the ball coming at him when he had to deal with contested catches. And Luther Burden is very polished in those respects. I think that when you look at year 1 versus year 2, you have to understand that Ben Johnson, unlike a lot of coaches, actually has a plan and executes it at a high level. Because when you look at what happened with Caleb Williams in year 1, not under Ben Johnson, but in year 1 just in general, he had an offense that was so bad that they didn't have the drops tied with the receivers' routes. Their best receiver was used to just running off script a lot and not really being as tied to his quarterback as he needed to in DJ Moore, because he worked with Cam Newton and Justin Fields, and there was really nobody else. The offensive line was atrocious, which meant that Caleb Williams was going to have to drop back and create off script at a very high rate of volume game to game. So by, late second quarter, he's already gassed. So when you start watching him throw the ball and he's making these incredible looking off platform throws, but they're just missing, or he's on platform and it's just missing downfield. And people like saying, like, see, he's not accurate. They're not really looking at the context of like he was getting the crap kicked out of him play after play, and that there was really no offensive structure, no veteran quarterbacks in the room. So you fast forward to Ben Johnson in year 2, and Ben Johnson knew this. He wanted his job because of Caleb Williams. So what does he do? Well, one, he negotiates that he gets the early picks in terms of who he got to draft, and Ryan Poles could take guys later, which guaranteed that he was going to get his guys. Number 2, he knew the guys probably to an extent, the types of guys he wanted to have. So instead of saying, all right, I'm going to take my rookies and put them in with Caleb, who I really need to understand my offense, which is probably going to take 2 years to do, I'm going to go ahead and pick guys who, off of free agency, who I know are going to be assignment sound, even if they aren't athletically elite. And I'm going to play them early, which allows me then to coach the hell out of the rookies and to be hard on them. And to be hard on Caleb, because Caleb now can't point fingers at the wide receivers who aren't running the routes right, other than DJ Moore occasionally on certain looks. And, DJ Moore still had a good season last year overall. But he could maximize that. Caleb, look, you've got to learn the system. You've got to learn the right read. You guys got to be on the same page and make it very clear, so that Caleb had a good template to work with. And then he could make his receivers, his tight end, rise to the occasion and get better. And so early in the season, or in the preseason, he could kick a guy off the field or off the practice, off a drill, who wasn't doing it right, because he was teaching in the way that he wanted to teach and making sure that he lit a fire under them or reinforced the fire that they already had. And then as the season went on, then he started inserting these guys into the lineup. So when we look at Luther Burden and we see, what's going on with him, Roma Dunze said, look, it's going to take at least 2 years for all of us to learn this offense. You look at Caleb and you go, 58% completion percentage last year. That's not very good. But when you layer the data together and look and correspond it with what actually happened on film, you realize that their offensive line got better. He had more fourth quarter comebacks, I think, than any quarterback last year. While his completion percentage was low, he threw the ball away more than I think any quarterback in the league last year. So he's actually following what a coach would want a mature quarterback to do, who didn't have complete understanding of an offense that typically takes 2 years to learn, and he's working with rookie players, key rookie players. So Ben Johnson had a very good game plan of what to do, and Caleb did a great job with it. And Luther Burden, they put him in situations where they could maximize what he did best, but when you look at training, training camp, most of these coaches are, they're talking out of the side of their neck with a lot of stuff, because there's things they're not going to tell the media to a certain extent, but there's going to be half truths or kind of hidden stuff. And Ben Johnson's not going to be 100% honest, but he's like a lot of the top coaches who are top minds in the league, which basically his thought is, my offense is hard to decipher anyway. I also create an offense that creates a lot of mismatches, and I'm very hard to scout in terms of my play calling decision making. So yeah, I can come in and tell people a lot of the absolute truth of what's going on. And the fact that he's, he talked about Burden last year compared to this year and how he feels about Burden this year and where Burden stands and what he's done. I think that you look at him and you have to understand that it's going to be a good year for him as long as that groin injury isn't going to linger throughout the season, which there's a chance that could happen. But I would say if people are expecting a 13, 14, 15, 1,600 yard receiver, they're probably off base just by the offense in itself. But if you're going to get a 1,000 yard to 1,100 yard receiver who can get you somewhere between about 6 to 8 touchdowns on the ground and maybe add one through the air and add one on the ground and have him neck and neck with Colston Loveland as probably the receiving leader on that team, and then have Rome Odunze as maybe a close third, and it's a fairly even split between the three, I'm totally on board with that because I see, to wrap this up, I see Colston Loveland as the receiving touchdown leader on this team, probably at about 10 touchdowns and about 900 to 950 yards. I've got Odunze at about 900 to 950 yards with 8 touchdowns. And those guys are probably going to have the most scores. That's how I see it. I have Luther Burden as a tight third with 7 scores, but he's going to be the yardage leader at 1,042 yards. That's how I kind of have that. And the target leader, mainly because he is going to be in the short and intermediate game with some opportunities in the deeper game because he's very good at that too. So this is a team where, to me, you look at Caleb Williams and that hole and you say he's going to surpass 4,000 yards. He's probably going to get over 30 touchdowns, not much more than both of those marks, but he's going to be in that range. I think he's going to hit about 60% completion rate. Wouldn't shock me if he jumped up even more than that. But as a result of that, Luther Burden makes a very strong, a very compelling mid-range wide receiver too, who if somebody else gets hurt and he's healthy enough to roll, his upside could be in the 1,200 yard, 10 touchdown range, which puts him maybe in the high wide receiver 2 value. But he also has a little bit of a bigger floor right now because of the groin injury. So to me, I'm trying to draft him where I can, but I'm not reaching. So I'm not getting a lot of him right now. But in Dynasty, I'm making him a priority of course, just because I think that there's still room for him to develop into a leading player. And we need to see how Odunze continues to develop his game. There's some questions and marks about him. I have no questions about Colston Loveland, though.
You know what, Matt? I love that. Honestly, I feel like I could clip that, right? And I could put you on a podium. I would find a clip of whatever, like something, a long-standing speech on a podium, have your face in there, superimpose it, and then just have this come out. Are you familiar with Bradley Stadler?
Yeah.
Have you seen his takes?
I know he doesn't like him. I've been alerted to it.
No.
Yeah.
I wish he was in the chat right now. Bradley, if you're listening, play back that first 10 minutes, man, please. Go ahead, Chris.
So he does not like him. Here's the thing. Burden finished wide receiver, 54, if you go by most cases. If he improves even up to wide receiver 30 to 35-ish, that's a great improvement on last season. I agree with all of what Matt said about the talent that he has. I love the talent coming out. I was drafting him as much as I could in the second round. That was a steal last year in our rookie drafts. Absolute steal. The problem is the volume. Like you were breaking him down, Matt. The numbers is really what I have a problem with Burden, in him being able to jump into the stratosphere that people are having to draft him at in round 4 of dynasty startups. It's just way too early. I'd love him in round 6 or 7. I'd be targeting him every draft, but I just have a problem with some of the other receivers that I can grab in that range, guys that have produced already. And I'm pretty confident, such as like even a Zay Flowers, who's going later than Burden in most of my drafts, I'd rather have Zay Flowers. Okay. He's young enough that I could still get plenty of years of production, and he doesn't have anywhere near the kind of competition that Burden has going on. I don't know. I mean, whether Burden gets 900 yards or 1,100 yards, there's a lot of receivers that could get 900 to 1,100 yards. And that's why it's very hard for us to break down the big pool of wide receivers every year from wide receiver 15 to like 40, right? Every season there's a huge pool. And I just find Burden stuck in that pool. I don't know that he can jump into that top 15 range. And that's the only problem I have with him. It isn't talent related. I love his talent. I just think that there's too much talent there to have an alpha. And then Caleb, 3,900 yards, 3,700 yards. I agree with you that his completion percentage should go up. It was down to 58% last year because he threw it away a lot more. And now he should complete some of those short passes a little bit more. And most likely a lot of those are short passes to Luther Burden. I agree. I just have a hard time of seeing him eclipse, 1050 yards. And then with Dunze and Loveland there in the red zone, it's going to be hard for him to get a monster touchdown season. So that's why I'm out. And it's never really talent related, my argument.
Well, so, I like the argument, and if, some things just to think about here, I would look at it this way. This year, look, in my dynasty rankings for if you're trying to win now, I have Zay Flowers one spot above Luther Burden. But I have them in my top 40 overall as players, because also you look at Zay Flowers, and he's going to be 26 years old at the end of the year. Luther Burden's only going to be 22. So you're really looking at, if you're going to look at 3-year increments that we like to look at in terms of dynasties windows, Luther Burden, if we're going to say up to 30 or 31, he's got 3 windows left. Zay Flowers has maybe 1.25. Also, here's the other thing. I understand the idea of like, there's a common perception of too many mouths to feed, and how do we go with that? But the guy that I have rated just above Zay Flowers is Jameson Williams. And let's look at Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams had a top 15 season, right? Top 15 season. He's 25 years old. It took him a few years because he's a bit of a knucklehead with some of the actions he did off the field that he can mature with. But let's see. They had Sam Laporta, who literally almost knocked down the door of Mike Ditka's rookie year record before Brock Bowers just knocked the door in. And he should be healthier now. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who gets regularly 1,400 to 1,600 yards, it seems like the past 3 years that he's been playing. And he's that high-end producer. Amon-Ra St. Brown is not as talented as Luther Burden. Amon-Ra St. Brown played in the same offense that Luther Burden is being featured in. When you have a good quarterback can support at least 2 to 3 valuable fantasy options. And when you're playing the Z or the slot spot, you're a high volume guy. So you're most likely at the peak of your career to be in the 120 to 150 target range. So, and I don't think Ben Johnson's going anywhere unless he completely loses his mind, but he's probably going to be there for 10 to 15 years. And that team's probably going to dominate because they're already still ahead of NFL defenses with how they're going to work. So for me, if Caleb Williams plays to the level that he's capable and continues learning, which I think we see that trajectory, there's promise there, he's going to be a good enough quarterback to support probably 2 to 3 players at that level. And the guy that's most likely to get the most targets is the Z, and that's Luther Burden. So for me, I look at that and I say, okay, so in win now rankings, he's top 40. In long build, for me, I have him 17th overall. And the only receivers I have above him, he's at the top of his tier. The only receivers I have above are, let's see, Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Malik Neighbors when he gets healthy, if he does. Jefferson, St. Brown, Lad McConkey I have up there because he's about to play that Tyreek Hill. And we can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
We are talking about him.
And Drake London, if Stefanski can somehow feature him in the slot role. And that's it. That's it. I mean, to me, I just named what? Okay, 8 about receivers. 10. I have Luther Burden 9th overall in long build because that's the thing. I mean, you can go back to Peyton Manning, the greatest show on turf. You can go to any of the, some of those things. They support 2 to 3 players, and usually the guy who gets the most targets is the yardage leader. So, I mean, I get there's a legitimate, part of the hard part with Dynasty and the fun challenge about it is we haven't seen these guys do it yet. Some of these guys do it just yet, but like the things that the guys who have done it that have in common with the guys that haven't are route skills, versatility to play more than one position, a second or third player who can create spacing in the passing game where you get good matchup opportunities, and a competent quarterback and a coach who keeps that offensive scheme ahead of the curve. And so for me, he checks every box that I look for on a receiver that I would project. May it not happen? It might not. And Bradley Stadler might go, see, I told you, but, and that's fine. That's cool. That's the fun part about the analysis is what we do. That's the fun part. But for me, I'm all in.
I'm with you, Matt. And honestly, I cannot believe that we talked about Luther Burden for 23 minutes and I didn't say a goddamn thing. So that's pretty
I can't believe he didn't say anything either.
I cannot believe.
I can't believe we talked this long about him.
I'm the great facilitator, though. And you mentioned him. Now. Matt, you segued into the next guy that I want to talk about, and Lad McConkey. Obviously, McDaniel over there, there's a lot of change. I think that he's a great guy to talk about just because he's in that same range where, he really, his rookie year was great. And in the grand scheme of things, we're talking about a second round wide receiver that probably exceeded expectations year one and then kind of dipped down last year. There was a lot of turmoil, just a lot of change. Obviously, we saw other wide receivers jump up and be a little more productive. And it was just, down year. But obviously, you were high on him with McDaniel going over there. Tell me the reasons why you're all in on Lad McConkey for 26.
Well, I was all in on him in year one because I felt like after studying him, what you saw was a great zone route runner. And we need to understand the NFL plays a lot of zone and that they play a lot of complex zones that where one side looks like man, the other side looks like zone, or there's 2 regions of the field or even 3 that look like different types of zones once the ball snapped, but they're disguised to look like one type of zone. And that crosses up quarterbacks, as we always know, but it also crosses up receivers because they have to read the field with the same immediacy as the quarterback and make sure that they are working to the spot based on the read of the defense. And then also, as the play is going on, when something gets covered, can they uncover in the right direction so that the quarterback is on the same page with them? That's the part that usually takes years. That's the part when we hear about Jeremy Bernard and everyone's going, he's going to be great this year. And the Pittsburgh Steelers writers are going all in. Or a few years ago when Romeo Doubs is the star of Packers camp. And then you hear the veteran quarterback, well, in this case, the same veteran quarterback, but it's a good example. However you feel about Aaron at this stage of his career. The thing is that he's a chess master when it comes to coverage. And all the guys that were top quarterbacks were. And they always say at some point in the game, they go, look, he's got a bright future, but he's got to learn the ins and outs of this playbook. And he's going to have to be on the same page with me with how we read defenses. And he said that. I remember him saying that the Romeo Doubs rookie year and was like, I know he's making contested catches and he's, beating people one-on-one and, He's going over the middle and taking a hit, and that's great, But that's what a wide receiver is supposed to do. A, and then B, they have to be on the same page with the quarterback, and these disguises they haven't seen yet. Not to the extent that they do, even if they're in the SEC, they don't see them to the extent that they see even with the worst defenses in the NFL. And so it's a process. And so when you look at McConkey, the first mini camp practices of his rookie year, the glaring thing that stuck out to me was Justin Herbert going to the media, or being asked by the media about him. He said, the guy already plays and reads coverage like a veteran. And then they gave an example of him, uncovering in the end zone, which is always an important part, and doing that. And you saw it throughout his first year that he was clearly the guy. I mean, Herbert already trusted him with throws that you usually see, Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison vintage era make when they've been playing together for 5, 6, 7 years. And so last year was a combination of that. He wasn't healthy. Keenan Allen, they covered him. They put more coverage on him early on. So Keenan Allen was wide open. Justin Herbert's played enough with Keenan Allen that he can target that dude all day and get the free money in there. And then they brought in Oronde Gadsden off the bench, and he was getting gimmies on top of that as well. Quentin Johnston certainly has improved with his pass catching and tracking techniques. So he's gotten better. They had enough to go around that they didn't need to lean on McConkey game after game after game. Well, eventually Oronde Gadsden got found out, and he basically disappeared after defenses said, okay, this is like Chase Claypool era Pittsburgh, where he's just getting gimmies. Let's go ahead and rotate our coverage a little bit sooner towards him or play him a little tighter, and let's see what happens.
You didn't have to do him like that, dude. You didn't have
sorry,
to get
but,
him. That was the Claypool.
Well, I mean, it may not be as bad as Claypool, but it's the same. I know. It's the same concept, my man. It's the same concept. I know, and that's why they also added 2 pro tight ends. This offseason, which is going to be interesting. But yeah, I think McConkey. They've already said he's going to be in a combination of a Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle role. Okay. And Quentin Johnston, I think if you watched his profile really at TCU, people saw him as a jump ball receiver because they throw it enough that he'd get some of them. I mean, even if he had to go to the local Euro restaurant and get some of those kebab sticks to implant in his finger, so at least he could stab at the ball a couple of times. But he's much better. He was always much better on slants, crossing routes, short area routes where he faced the ball already and the ball's near his body and he could grab it and run. He was an excellent runner after the catch, and he's a good quick game route runner. But they tried to put him in that role of the same way that they NFL tried to put Jalen Reagor in that jump ball role, and it just didn't quite work out. Now, Johnston's gotten better at this, but it's still not the best part of his game. So the fact that they brought in Mike McDaniel and said, let's play the quick game. Let's get Justin Herbert to address some things and adjust his game, because he's probably capable of adjusting that better than we try to do certain things with receivers. And we give him quick passes, quick hitting targets to very quick receivers. One of them is physical in addition to that. And then both of them can go deep, but McConkey is very good deep. I think what we're going to see here is, while McConkey's no Tyreek Hill, he is certainly a good player after the catch. He can play a little bit inside out for you. And when you add Trey Harris to the equation, when they want to go 3 receivers, they'll put Harris outside, probably at flanker. They'll probably put Quentin at X. They'll put McConkey inside, which means two-way goes against a very good route runner. That's an easy matchup. And then also you can send him deep out of those looks too, because he's going to get matched up against safeties and linebackers. So, when you combine all that information and then say, oh, even if their base set's 12, well, Harris isn't going to be on the field. It's going to be Johnston and McConkey. McConkey will play the flanker role.
Yeah.
And then they can split out Njoku and create issues if they want to, or if it's Gadsden, they can do that too. And they still have a blocker who can operate a la Mark Andrews a bit, like Charlie Kolar. So this is a diverse offense, or they split out, the little, Keaton Mitchell and let him run some routes that occupy safeties because of his speed. I just think that as creative as Mike McDaniel is, and as much of an upgrade to his offense at quarterback that he now has, a guy who's probably not gonna. You didn't have, with Tua Tagovailoa, he couldn't throw with velocity to certain ranges of the field, and defenses started to figure this out. And I said, fine, I'm not scared of Tyreek Hill anymore because I know what kind of routes he's running, and I know he can't throw those routes. Let's make him throw those routes to Tyreek Hill. Miss, 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 miss. And then they had to change some of their offense with that. That's not going to happen with Justin Herbert. So to me, McConkey's the best receiver on the team. He's going to get the most targets, and it's a diverse offense with a good quarterback. So once again, I'm all in on him too.
Man, that's another one. So Chris, you are against like one of the most historical talent evaluators that we're talking to right now. Two of everybody's wrong, but I feel like you're on the wrong side a couple of times. And Chris, we're not even going to let you rebuttal because I'm just going to keep it moving.
Yes, let me ask you, Matt. I like Quentin Johnson. It's too much going on there.
We're not doing We're not doing that right now.
Go ahead, move it on.
Matt, so if you are this high on Burden, this high on McConkey, where does Emeka Egbuka, who is probably one of the most touted second-year guys in this range right here, we're talking about dynasty evaluation only, where would you have Emeka Egbuka in comparison to Ladd McConkey and Burden year two?
A very close third to Burden. That's where he's in my top 20 in my long builds right now. And part of that is there's the iffiness of is Baker Mayfield going to, continue to be the long-term quarterback? Will they find a solution once Chris Godwin leaves so that they have a second really good receiver to take some of the heat off of Egbuka? And Egbuka, he drops the ball a little bit, not just last year at Ohio State. Not a major problem, but enough that when you start splitting hairs among guys who are they a potential top end wide receiver one, or are they a guy on the cusp of wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1? And I'm kind of more on the cusp right now. Also, Chris Godwin is healthy. So the fact that he's healthy, I know he's, 29 and he's getting up there in age and, but he, for the past 10, 12 years, when you look at receivers, he's one of the most versatile wide receivers in the game. He's going to play a lot in the slot. He's going to get a lot of those, McConkey Burden type of targets where you're on the same page with your quarterback. But he's also going to get red zone opportunities because he's going to replace Mike Evans in that role of the go up and get it guy occasionally with some of that. Is he going to be the deep threat? No, probably Egbuka will probably do more of that, or they'll put in, Tez Johnson on some matchups to work him inside, things like that. I mean, you'll get some from Godwin that way, but I think with Egbuka, I don't have any problems with anybody looking at him and say, he's a guy who's going to be a future wide receiver 1, and it might even be this year. I think my difference of opinion with a lot of people is they see him and go, JSN. He's gonna be the JSN. That's what I keep seeing on social media is he's this year's JSN. There's too much diversity on this passing offense for him to be JSN. And frankly, he was more of a, he was not as good of a route runner as JSN. Like good, competent, could start right away. I mean, he's a very good player, but it's just kind of like, again, comparing Malik Neighbors' route running to Luther Burden's. or JSN's to Emeka Egbuka. That's not there. Now, if you want to compare JSN's route running to somebody at Ohio State, we can talk about a rookie in Tennessee who I think is a lot better than people realize, and they're slow. They're quickly finding out, even though I think they want to say we don't know yet. It's just the preseason, but that dude can run every route, and I think people kind of shined over that. I'll end it by saying that I think that as I wrote last November at Football Guys, it would not shock me at all if Carnell Tate is just a pseudonym or a pen name for Justin Jefferson, and he just wanted to play college football for a little bit longer, and he got one of those slick deals at Ohio State.
Where's Frankie? Where's Frankie at?
Where's Frankie? He would love you.
We have our Devi host is so we have a bet this year, right? So essentially I sat down and we had a blown pod. We were doing a mock draft and it just blew up in our face. So we just started talking ball and started talking nonsense. And I said, let's make a long-standing bet for the year where I take a guy, you take a guy, and Chris takes a guy, and then we essentially will at the end of the year just say, all right, we're going to buy you cigars. If my guy loses, I got you cigars, you get me. We're going to just so I took Justin Jefferson. I'm saying Justin Jefferson's going to have a revival year. He's going to come back, and little Kyler Murray is going to just make him a wide receiver 1 again. And Frank took Carnell Tate and Chris took George Pickens. So
nice.
Whoever is the victor is the cigar smoker there in this little bet that we have. So I'm excited.
Does Frankie happen to ride a motorcycle and have like one of those white combat hats? Because I saw him pass by me yesterday smoking a stogie while he was riding his motorcycle. But I don't know. He
does smoke stogies. He'll smoke stogies on the pod and not have a lighter that works.
Not have a lighter. Yeah, we had somebody
over and over again.
For a lighter. Wow.
Everybody in the comments, like, get Frankie a lighter somewhere, somehow. Get him a lighter.
Yeah, this guy had a chopper and one of those white combat hats on. And
Frankie's cool, but he's not that cool, man.
Okay, there we go. All right, sorry, Frankie.
Frankie's not that cool.
But Matt, I do agree with you on Egbuka as opposed to Bird.
The other two, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I don't see the high the JSN type ceiling for Egbuka, and he's my guy. I mean, I'm a Tampa fan. I agree with you on Godwin taking enough of the targets away from him, and Baker spreading it around, and then the question mark about his future there now. Yeah, it's a tough buy for me to think that Egbuka could finish top 5 this season.
Right.
Like some think.
Yeah, look, you can get him as your wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. Yeah. If you go wide receivers early, that's a great lineup. But I also think, I'm also more of a higher risk guy, and I look at, redrafts or dynasty formats, and I go, I could load up on running backs early, and I could have a lineup of, I don't know, Lad McConkey, Luther Burden, Carnell Tate, and either Parker Washington and or Mike Wilson. And that may not seem like a great wide receiver lineup, but it works for me. I'm
running back heavy, I'd be
proud of.
Yeah. I mean, Egbuka to me has like jumped the shark a little bit in the terms of ADP and where he's at. I do think that Egbuka is going to have a substantially better season if he's fully healthy. But I also don't think that he's going to sniff, somebody like Zay Flowers, who is going behind him, like Chris mentioned. And even Luther Burden, I think, is going to at least have, I think you're right. You nailed it on that sense that, the offense is just going to be humming. I think I'm taking the Bears offense over Baker Mayfield in a frustrating year, not getting paid, still being not fully healthy. I just don't see it for the Bucs this year. Sorry, Chris. I'm all in on the Bears.
No, I'm good. For me, as a Bucs fan, I ultimately hope that Egbuka is our, long-term wide receiver 2. I want to see. I don't think it's Ted Hurst is the answer as the long-term 1. He's got all the talent in the world, but it's Ted Hurst from a D2 school, right? I do hope that we somehow get a true 1 to replace Mike Evans, and Egbuka is just a solid 2, like a Reggie Wayne type, right? So.
Ted Hurst looks like George Pickens, and I've been saying that for 2 years now.
Go by the highlights, man. He's all world.
Not even the highlights. I mean, just his college game film. I think that you're looking at somebody that probably was overlooked a little bit, but that's for another pod. I mean, Matt, before we move on to running backs and we're going to get into vets and stuff like that, is there any wide receiver like a Jaylin Higgins, somebody that you're higher on than, I guess, consensus, or anybody that you see rising out of this class? I mean, when we look back on this class, we got to tell our grandkids about it, because I think it's definitely going to at least mature into one of the deepest classes that we've seen through and through. I haven't even touched on the running backs with Omarion Hampton, TreVeyon Henderson. And then there's the back-leered guys like Bhayshul Tuten, everybody that, expects a big rise out of. But any wide receiver that kind of just tickles your fancy a little bit that you're looking at ADP wise, or just overall value wise, that you're in on?
Yeah, I'm going to be, I've been patient about Wilson. I've been patient about, Parker Washington in the past for years, just kind of always try to get that guy in people's ears in just about every 3 articles that I do at Football Guys for the past few years. And the guy that I think will be that player who's in that class is Jaylin Noel. I know that Noel was hurt, so we haven't seen him in training camp yet. He's just kind of got cleared to practice. So there's not much talk about him. And Jaden Higgins has gotten the love, and deservedly so. He's a big dude with good quickness, good feet, go up and get the ball. And Nico Collins has talked him up and said he's going to be a monster at some point. He's definitely a good ad to have. I have him, but I also think that I'm skeptical about Tank Dell. And when we watched Jaylin Noel last year in limited time, he was the go-to guy for CJ Stroud in a lot of situational targets that you wouldn't expect from a rookie, and he made good on them. He can catch in contested areas. He can play flanker, very skilled after the catch, very fast, and he's a good route runner, and he can play in the slot too. And I just think he's one of those guys that would not shock me that's not going to get drafted at all in redraft leagues this year, but he's going to be the hot waiver wire commodity once the dust settles in, say, week 5, week 6, and suddenly now he's like a roster changer for your season, because suddenly now you're getting a wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 2 even out of the mix. And then we start looking at him by year 3, and if that doesn't happen, I would believe very clearly it's going to be like Parker Washington, where it's like they put him in the game and he shines. He's got a rapport with CJ Stroud. The coaches are like, yeah, he's pretty good, but we're really excited about Jaden Higgins. We're really excited about Nico Collins. And then by the end of the next year, they're like, we're gonna run the offense through Jaden Noel. I mean, like, I could see that eventually happening, kind of like with Parker. So yeah, I'm high on him, and he's at an extreme discount.
He is, and I think
that's
about
free. I mean, he's free. If you
Christian Kirk is the guy that left. Obviously, he was banged up last year, but that just opens up a run lane for Noel. And the fact that everyone's on Jaden Higgins, I agree that he's probably going to be a relevant guy. But Nico Collins, they're almost the archetype is the same there. As far as player goes, they don't really have that slot guy. Jaden Higgins is another big guy, so I could definitely see a world where, he's, his counterpart there is going to be working out of the slot and working in the middle of the field. And if Tank Dell doesn't, I'm with you on that. I think I sold Tank Dell high everywhere that I probably could have so far this offseason. But, I can't imagine he's going to beat out somebody like, I don't know. I don't see it. I'm not buying the hype. Unfortunately,
that's cool.
It is what it is. Not with Noel. I'm talking about with
Higgins.
I like Higgins too. But Tank Dell, miss me with that. No, I'm with you. I did a rookie pod last year, and that he did the flat bench. I think he set the record for wide receiver on the flat bench. And ever since I watched that video, I said, I'm all in. That's my guy right there. So I need to see him rise. You're obviously in on McDaniel over there, and you want to see the Chargers succeed. You think they're going to use a quick passing offense. Obviously, that's how they work over there. But what does that mean for Omarion Hampton? Because Omarion Hampton has really risen up the boards, and he's really up there in the range of a Genti or a Chain or anybody of that second tier running back. Do you buy into the hype on somebody like Hampton for this year?
No, I buy into the possibility of the hype, and I understand why people like him. But the reason why I think people like him and the reality of what he actually is, there's a bit of a gap. I think he can be a running back too. And if injuries strike and he has to be leaned on as a high volume player, he will basically get running back one value on the cusp of running back one in larger leagues just by sheer brute volume. Okay. And the reason that I feel that way about Omarion Hampton is that I think the way people see him is that he's big, he's strong, and he's fast. And he can catch the ball. And when they see a guy who's big, strong, and fast catch a wheel route, they start sucking their thumb and they start thinking that, like, oh my God, the possibilities of this guy. And I'm still thinking about Shane Vereen, if you remember him, who wasn't big, strong, or fast, but he could catch wheel routes, and everybody got excited about his wheel route potential until after about 3 seasons of Tom Brady throwing in wheel routes every other game, and it never really quite working out, other than maybe once every 3 or 4 games. And we realized, oh yeah, just because he can catch a wheel route that's not a big thing. Let's watch what Chase Brown does as a route runner and start studying that of what it means to be a good receiver. So you look at Omarion Hampton in North Carolina, and he's a guy who has high top end speed, but he needs a long runway to get up to that top end speed, kind of like Latavius Murray needed a long runway to get up to top speed. This is why acceleration is more important than deep speed. That first 10 to 15 yards is what matters. You need quick feet, the ability to create with certain types of looks. Now, if you're running gap schemes where they give you the one runway and they say, look, boss, just hit this. And if somebody happens to get in the way, just shear through them as best you can, carry them with you, set up this one hole. And if you can do that, you're golden. And we do that enough, and we're going to beat that team into submission. He's a sledgehammer. Okay. And he can swing the sledgehammer fast enough that he's going to be able to knock down some concrete with that. But when you ask him to run zone, especially outside zone, this is where you have 3 options on any given play, depending on your coach. Generally, it's coached that way. Now, if you went to the University of Iowa, they wouldn't let you cut back. But, if you're, they just keep it play side and limit their running backs. But, with pro games, they expect you to cram, cut back, or bounce, one of those 3 options. And if the defense happens to, plug up the crease, get early penetration, foil what's going to happen, you need to be creative enough to sidestep and find the next crease over, or to be able to get back into that crease. And that means that you have to be a fast processor, and your feet need to be really fluent at a variety of movements that are efficient as well as being dynamic. That's not Omarion Hampton's game. And we saw that last year. If you watch early in the season, regardless of what the data says, if you just watch the film, Najee Harris outplayed Omarion Hampton on those types of runs regularly. And then he got hurt. Okay. And then Kamani Vidal came in, who's also pretty good at that stuff. Not as good as Najee was. And Najee made a living in Pittsburgh foiling bad run fits and bad situations because their offensive line was not good. So, people mistook the data for what a good running back or a competent running back even is. And I think that Harris, if healthy, we would have seen a true committee split. With Vidal and with Keaton Mitchell, it's not going to be a true committee split, but I think you're going to see about 200 carries for Omarion Hampton, and you're going to see 100 for probably, for one of the, probably Vidal, and 50 for Mitchell, or it'll be flip-flopped. And the other one will have, one of those two will have a lot in the passing game. So to me, Hampton's more like a running back 15 to 20 in that range this year. And even Mike McDaniel came out and said, Sorry, fantasy owners. The bad news is we're going to have, I've got bad news, but the good news for us is we have 3 running backs who we feel like we're going to be able to do different things with. Now, people say, well, he said we were going to have 4 running backs in Miami, but let's remember, and Devon Achane had like a huge season. Let's remember too, Raheem Mostert was, basically in and out of or on and off the injury table a fair bit during that phase of his career. Jeff Wilson was also hurt in that phase of his career. So half the depth chart that they talked about wasn't even available for a lot of those weeks. So, it's a snappy Twitter comeback, but it's not rooted in like context of what actually went on here. The design is he wants to mix and match backs because Keaton Mitchell is going to be able to threaten the defense deep. He's going to be able to run draw plays. He's going to be able to run outside zone because of his speed to the corner, and he gets there fast, which when you look at Hampton, he doesn't get there fast. He gets to the edge, and somebody's hot on his heels, and he's got to bowl through them for somewhere between -1 and 5 yards, depending on how good the crease was. But he's not creating to make that situation. He's a bulldozer. He's the gap runner. Vidal's going to be more the zone runner to a certain extent. They're going to run all 3 schemes or the different blocking with all 3 backs, but it's enough that he's limited. Mike McDaniel already knows it. He already knows what he can and cannot do most likely. And so when people say, oh, he's going to be a top 5 running back, I'm getting that running back 12 to 14. I think that they have to realistically look at this and understand that there's a lot of ifs that need to happen for him to get that. And that didn't prove you right. It just meant that circumstances worked out in your favor, as opposed to this was our plan and it actually happened.
Man. So yeah, I think, I've gone back and forth on Omarion Hampton. And I think that at the beginning of the offseason, I was really hammering the fact that he was going to be going after Achane and in this range where I feel pretty good in comparison. Now he's really up there, man. He's like he's way up there. He's like borderline a first round dynasty pick at this range, going next to
like him
somebody like Genty. Yeah. And I think I'm closer to you, Matt. I think that, you want to disparage the coach speak and really just say, okay, they're going to say anything they want to say in the offseason. But you're right. I mean, Achane didn't have a Keaton Mitchell. He didn't have a Vidal who actually proved himself to be a very competent and, decent starting running back last year when everyone went down. I think that you're looking at somebody that still earned at least a degree of snap share a little bit. I'm not saying he's going to take over by any means, but yeah, I agree with you on that. And then it leads me to the next question. What do we do with somebody like TreVeyon Henderson? Like when you're looking at a snap share split, like in New England, where, Ramondre Stevenson isn't going away, but you also can see that TreVeyon Henderson has this electricity. He has this ability to make something out of nothing. The big play ability goes a long way. Are you in on TreVeyon Henderson long-term in Dynasty?
I have him not in the way most people are. I have him as my 16th running back in long builds, mainly because Ramondre isn't going away for at least another season. TreVeyon Henderson probably will get matched with another guy because, again, he's a good gap runner. Hit it quick. He can identify the penetration and hit the tight crease when he knows he's got one hole. When he's got multiple creases, that's when we see the negative carry runs, the inability to create when things are difficult, like things are NFL level difficult. Whereas Ramondre Stevenson may not have that, as I joke, speed is the cleavage of NFL decision makers and fantasy GMs. I would say that TreVeyon Henderson has a lot of cleavage for them. And so
big
what
boobies
ends up happening,
for you guys out there, big boobies.
And a lot of what happens there is that Ramondre Stevenson is creative in those spaces. He's slower, but he has excellent feet, excellent processing. He's a better pass protector. He's as good of a receiver, even if he's not as fast. He gets open He knows how to get open and work open, and he's reliable catching the ball. Yeah, had some fumbles last year, but that's not normally his deal. Oh, and he's a bulldozer in the end zone who can run through a defensive tackle, which is kind of rare in the NFL at that level, that you can do that. So, to me, maybe I'm more about, the legs and the hips than I am about the cleavage when it comes to my running backs, because I want that power base to basically run through people and bowl them over. So that's where I think, by the time Henderson they're either going to look at Henderson and go, he's a good second running back who we can use in an even split with another back. But I don't see him being, he's the next Christian McCaffrey. He's the next Jahmyr Gibbs, because I don't think, we'll see this year. If he improves enough to start running zone and you see him as a good zone runner, I'm going to completely change my tune on that. But so far, I saw Jahmyr Gibbs at Georgia Tech. I saw him at Alabama. He could run zone back then.
Yeah.
He didn't need that. And TreVeyon has some weird footwork stuff that he's still got to work out. Like when it comes to certain cuts that he tries to make where he slips or he doesn't maintain his balance at a good level and is able to explode out of that. So he's very good at what he does well. But I think that, like Omarion Hampton, he doesn't do enough at a high level for you to look at him and go, bell cow back, who's going to be elite.
Yeah.
I'm getting like,
go ahead.
Hampton, you're feeling is more like a career trajectory of like DeAndre Swift is what you're saying, right? DeAndre Swift, he's always had to have a second back, and he's always finished roughly 15 to 20-ish.
Yeah.
TreVeyon, I think, is what you're going with. Is that?
Then TreVeyon's a little different style back. However, he's always also going to need that secondary guy. I mean, he needed it at Ohio State. That's why they had Quinshon Judkins there to do the dirty work. And so unless Henderson does show that improvement, we're not going to see Jahmyr Gibbs out of him.
Yeah, I'd say Henderson's like a better Tevin Coleman. You
Sure.
know what Shanahan wanted Tevin Coleman to be, but both of them still might not quite be that. And then I would say Hampton is probably, a better version of Jamal Williams in terms of, that guy that you can put him in the red zone, he'll hammer through. He may develop enough to be more than Williams, but not have that high ceiling.
That's the part that with Hampton, though, that really excites me for this year, because I think that Chargers offense can just, be an absolute truck this season where,
sure.
I mean, if they hit on all cylinders and, you already talked about Herbert when you talked about McConkey, because I like Quentin Johnston just based on where the ADP is with QJ and Ladd. That's where I'm leaning QJ. It's just because there's like a 6-round separation in ADP between the two, and I feel they can finish pretty close.
I take them both most of the time in redraft right
now. So that's where I see Hampton, the possibility is there like for 15 touchdowns. Raheem Mostert got 18 touchdowns one year for a McDaniel offense.
Well, I mean, you're also looking at
what
Matt pointed out is we're talking about a Tua versus a Herbert too. I mean,
yes, Herbert's way more.
The reason why somebody's going to score 15 touchdowns with a Tua is because he doesn't have any red zone efficiency, and I think that Herbert likely is going to still produce a decent amount of touchdowns this year. And I mean, not to go in reverse here, but Jamal, that season when he was with Swift and he scored like 18 touchdowns, and then he would get on camera in the locker room and talk about his Pokemon collection cards and everything. He is the epitome of. He's the best.
He was a character.
I had Jamal on my film room when he was at BYU. His trainer was looking for me at the Senior Bowl and kind of approached me and said, I was told I should come watch, have you watch some film with Jamal? We'd like to have him on your show. And I was like, and normally when I hear stuff like that, it's usually with somebody and it's through an agent, and the agent wants it to be a glorified, like, fluff
pumping them up.
magazine pick. And I just said, I'm more than happy to do this, but you guys do realize I did a YouTube video where I talked about his immaturity at BYU. And like, I liked him as a player, but I had a balanced view with what I'm looking at with him. And they go, that's why we picked you. And I was like, okay, so that's great. I said, so the next question is, can I pick the games that we watch and have him watch with me? Because I'm not going to pick the 120-yard game. I'm going to pick Michigan State where he averaged 3 yards a carry, and I want to talk about his decision-making and things like that. Are you game with that? And they said, absolutely. And at that point, and Lee Steinberg was his agent. So, and I was like, great, it's on. And he was awesome. Jamal was awesome.
So this is a pod, right? And
this is a YouTube film room that I did years ago on my YouTube.
You still have that video?
It's still up there on my channel. Yeah, Matt Waldman's RSP film room. Yeah.
I'll find it. That's cool, man.
He was awesome. He was a nice kid, just totally engaging, great personality. I always was rooting for him just from that standpoint. But you're right. I mean, like, I have Hampton at about 1,100 yards total in offense and about 12 touchdowns total.
Okay.
So it's not, he could wind up being a low end running back one just because maybe the other guys I projected to be in that same range don't hit that, but I think he's a pretty good bet to hit that. It's just, I don't see him getting over that.
Okay.
And I still want to talk a little bit about aging vets that you want on your roster,
sure,
guys that you still value. But before we just jump to that, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I want to talk Bhayshul Tuten. So I think that he's a polarizing guy in dynasty communities. Obviously, you're out on him. Where do you stand on him as far as what you see for him? I view him as, when you said these elite tiered running backs are split back guys, Bhayshul Tuten is even farther down in the split backfield depth chart to me when I look at guys that definitely need somebody like a Chris Rodriguez, somebody that's going to be that bruiser. And I think that you probably do share that thought process, but I want to hear what you think about Bhayshul Tuten long term.
Long term, I'm higher on him than short term. But also I understand that Tuten's size might be a limiting factor for coaches, and they see that he's always going to need a number two, like you just said. And like this year, I have this team probably rushing for about 1,600 yards. And I think 1,300 of them or 1,400 of those yards are probably going to come from Rodriguez and Bhayshul Tuten at a near even split, and probably a near even split in the red zone too. In terms of what they do. And then Tuten's going to get the advantage as a receiving back, but then maybe they'll finally use LaQuinton Allen. Not that I was really like waited with bated breath on that, but they might use him more as a closer to even split. And if that doesn't work, Amir Abdullah's still on the team, I think. And he's kind of a stalwart who at one time was a promising running back one for the Lions before he fumbled the ball away a lot, which Bhayshul Tuten has to prove in a full season that he won't do, because his ball security was atrocious in college. But if he improves upon that, he's one of those guys that I would prefer to be taking him as like my third running back in Dynasty and hoping that he surprises me, knowing and hopefully having a good fourth running back to boot. In case he fails, because I think he's got a boom bust profile. I love he runs hard. He's got good vision, I think, most of the time. Sometimes he leans a little too much on trying to bounce things and use his speed. But it really does, when he's on and he's playing to the level of maturity that he should, he's a good decision maker. He's creative. He's dynamic. Really fun to watch with that breakaway speed. And I think that he's one of those guys that he could be the high end side for him if he really practices craft well, is Chase Brown. Because Chase Brown wasn't all that of a mature player coming out. He made a lot of goofy decisions as a runner at Illinois, even though people were like, oh, I'm really high on him because he's a great athlete. I used to look at him and go, all right, yeah, there's that athletic ability's there, but there's some goofy stuff he does in terms of not following blocks, trying to bounce things in directions that were kind of nutty. Not all the time, but just enough that you go, I don't know if he's going to get to where he is today. And he's getting there. That's for sure. So Tuten could take that path. So he's a boom bust pick. He's worth taking the risk on. But if you're in a dynasty draft, maybe you go, if I'm taking Tuten, then I don't want it. Maybe there's 3 guys on my list like that. Maybe I don't take all 3 for my dynasty team. I just take one of these guys, and that was my pick. Oh well, then I'll be a little safer with some other ones that are on my list.
Yeah, I like that. That's how I always tell people. If you're going to go ceiling, you got to go floor, and you got to alternate that, or at least have some safety attached to some of the volatile picks that you make. And Tuten, I'm BC guy. I'm BC ticket holder. I go to all the BC games, and I saw so much of Tuten in college, and he dominated BC.
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched any of these games. VTech, I think he had like 300 yards on him one time. It was just incredible. It was like 3 touchdowns and like 250 or something like that. It was just like, I got to know this guy. I got to watch this guy. And I've been a fan ever since I went to that game because I just watched it with my eyeballs. And I said, this guy is incredible, and he does have that ability to be that absolute monster. I think that I'm with you on that. I just don't know if he's going to see that path on Jacksonville, but you're right. There's got to be a lot of things that go right. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. He's scary,
Yeah.
And to save some time, I want to jump right into it. Chris is a big old head when it comes to running backs. He wants these guys on the 1-year deal all the way at the end. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're almost in retirement, but you come back out for a 1-year thing and you're like, all right, I guess I'll get
I like guys that are Hall of Fame running backs, and I like playing the running back position on a 1-year clip in Dynasty. That's how I look at running backs.
We know NerdBoi is totally trolling you right now.
He hates the way I play running back position.
All right. I got to ask
totally
you.
The opposite.
The Christian McCaffrey ADP is too damn high for me. Do you like it? Do you not like it? And then let's segue into your favorite buys for the rookies, the old guys, the guys that are on their way out, but still are undervalued in Dynasty.
Sure. Well, Chris and I have a bit of affinity for the old heads here. That's probably what it is.
There's some whites coming in.
Okay, good.
Too much color in it, Matt.
Yeah.
Couple years.
Yeah.
I'm coming.
But we'll look at it this way. I had Christian McCaffrey number 1 overall in fantasy last year. That was the guy. And I think that he still has a chance to be that guy, even if I don't have him number 1. I think he's still a top 5 talent, and with that passing game the way it is right now, and a little bit of flux due to all the injuries, and they've had to kind of reformat what they're doing, he's still the safest guy on that roster other than Brock Purdy. So I like him. I'm draft. I did a series this week or the past 3 weeks of love, hate, and what I call it, true love or risk reward at each, the front turn, the back turn, and the middle of drafts. And I did like 10 drafts and showed, here's me sticking to ADP, and I like these drafts. Here's me on purpose picking drafts that I don't, or drafting in a way that I would never do, but I'm doing it closely by ADP and mistakes that I see people make, at least from my perspective. And the teams may turn out good, but like conceptually, they make no sense, So, and then I said, forget ADP, I'm not going to and I'm going to use it as a guideline more than I'm going to use it as a rule. And I'm going to reach where I need to reach. And I'm going to do some things like that. And in those drafts, which I tended to like the most, just because I don't play by the rules. I'm not a play by the rules person. If anybody who watches me, they pretty much know that, I still want Derrick Henry. I still want Saquon Barkley. I made myself this today when I was finishing up the late turn article put Chase Brown over one of those guys in one of the 3 drafts that I did for my forget ADP thing, just so that I could say, if you really don't have the desire to have 2 old heads back to back, here's a guy that I would pick. But every time I did it, I was like, why the fuck am I drafting Chase Brown when I could have these 2 guys?
And I love Chase Brown.
I do too.
He's
He's
Brown too.
Good.
I
do too.
The best route runner. Honestly, if you're going to compare anybody to Christian McCaffrey, I'm doing Chase Brown. I don't care.
Of course you are. And you're right. But here's the thing. If Joe Burrow stays healthy, and I know that might be an if to a lot of people, and you don't have Joe Flacco in there, well, that ball is going to never hit the ground. And it's never, and they're not going to get as much touches because he's going to be able to go. I mean, he's going to get Brown his touches and targets, but it won't be as high of a ceiling when he's going to Higgins and Jamar Chase. And if Eric All's healthy enough, he's a dynamic player when healthy. You still got Josephus, who him and Brown work out with my guy, Drew Lieberman, and have learned the art of route running with him, and he's doing well. So there's a lot to spread around there, and I just don't think the upside's as high as, Derrick Henry behind a healthy offensive line with a healthy Lamar Jackson who opens lanes for him because of the threat of his legs, or, Derrick Henry, or Saquon Barkley with Hurts. And I know that outside zone might be a little trickier for him in certain respects, but it's, he's not going to be awful at it most likely. And they're going to need to run the ball with him. They're going to throw the ball to him more too. And I hear Tank Bigsby, we're going to do more with him. That's fine. The same way that they go, we got to get Christian McCaffrey off the field. And they never do. So to me, I'm totally good. I mean, and if Saquon Barkley's running back too, and I'm as a running back too, and I'm picking him as essentially a running back too, I don't care, if as long as one of those guys hits. And Derrick Henry, from what I've seen thus far, if he gets hurt, someone's going to go say, I told you so. But he's never really gotten hurt for very often. He trains and maintains his diet like a demon, and he's a defensive end with footwork for a running back who, the less evolved analysts go, he just falls down and he gets 4 yards, and okay, you keep thinking that all day. So those guys definitely, I am all in on those guys. Chris Godwin, absolutely. Just because he is healthy. I was a year early on him. I should have paid more attention to the atrophy with the leg where it was. But that dude is such a good all-tool wide receiver that's a difficult prospect to ignore. Matthew Stafford, I do not get it. Okay. Matthew Stafford should be your third quarterback at the worst in redraft right now. Should be your quarterback 3. Mm-hmm. People are going to go, regression, and it was a fluke. And okay, can you please look at Tom Brady when he went to Tampa? Can you please look at Peyton Manning when he went to Denver? Can we look at quarterbacks who understand how to read defenses, who take care of their bodies? And yes, Stafford has been literally a crash test dummy in Detroit for 2/3 of his career. He also consulted Tom Brady on diet and exercise. And when you look at him now, you're like, did he really have massive ligament issues, or did he break bones in his back where it was painful, but he didn't create issues where he can't move? He happens to have the best one-on-one route runner in football in Devontae Adams, another old head that is going at still an absurd level where they think he's just some red zone guy that they go, he's the designated hitter of receivers right now. That's the way fantasy people see him. And you're like, dude, no, he can still be a wide receiver 1 if they needed him to be. But they don't, because they have Nakua. And they have a cutting-edge offensive mind who's ahead of the game there with a strong running game. Why on earth would you take anyone not named Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson? Yeah, that's it for me. That's it for me. Then Matthew Stafford right now with that offense. It makes zero sense because he's got the receivers who are smart enough to adjust with him, the offensive mind that's smart enough to put them in the positions that they need to, and a quarterback who was the precursor as a thrower to Patrick Mahomes, but has like 10 years more experience than him, and everything he's seeing now is basically in slow motion, and he's training well enough that he's not even like Tom Brady's age when he came to Tampa. He's what, like 5 years younger? I think he's like 4 or 5 years younger than what.
Yeah, I think Brady was 38. I think Stafford's like 35, maybe.
Or
34?
maybe he's
Stafford's
37.
like 38 now.
Yeah, and I thought
Is
Brady
he?
was like
Okay.
40. I thought Brady was like 42.
It could-
maybe
honestly,
I'm over
Brady
it.
was 42, I think, when he came to Tampa.
Yeah.
42.
Okay. You're
Yeah.
right then.
So
Yeah.
it's
By
like,
the way, guys,
Yeah.
the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers just happened. Drew Aller to WetGen for 70 yards. And then Aller ran it in. So just throwing it.
that's good. My timeline is going to be filled with Steelers people telling me that I'm totally wrong on the next Johnny Unitas.
I know.
So
It's going to be I remember when Kenny Pickett lit up the world actually in preseason a couple times too.
Will Levis,
Will Levis did, JJ McCarthy,
Oh,
all these guys looked like preseason superstars.
I still remember doing a video on Marcus Mariota, and that he was kind of a robotic quarterback who, if you really broke it down for him well and told him exactly what to do, he could really execute well. But there were some weaknesses with his game. And I still remember a comment from somebody after his 4-touchdown debut about how wrong I was about Marcus Mariota, and that happens every year. Those types of things happen every year. But Marcus Mariota is a very good career backup, who's a robotic quarterback who needs a lot told to him and a lot schemed up. So, but yeah, those are some guys. I still think, David Montgomery may not qualify, but at 28, I'd say he's pretty close. He's a backbreaker. He's not a game breaker. He's a backbreaker. But the Texans have revamped their offensive line. I think it should be better. And Woody Marks, they basically said, you're going to return kicks. You're going to have a role in the receiving game, which translation, if David Montgomery gets hurt, maybe they'll call Nick Chubb back up or trade for James Conner, or trade for one, or take a bigger back off
Najee.
Najee, if he's healthy enough to go.
Yeah.
Any of those things. Yeah.
I'm waiting for Najee to come back, man. If Nick Chubb comes back before Najee, I am flipping.
Najee is going to screw up some running back room yet.
I don't care if he's got one eye. He's definitely better than Nick Chubb right now. I gotta say it.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe not. I don't know. Nick Chubb, he looked okay for a stretch of time last year. Yeah. Who is it that you're going to see come back from an awful year last year? I know that you like Lad McConkey obviously coming back, but who is somebody that just like a Brian Thomas Jr., somebody that absolutely just tanked last year? Is there anybody? I mean, I'm in on the Minnesota Vikings. I could probably name anybody from the Minnesota Vikings, even a Hawkinson. I think that is, dead to the world, is still going to be at least okay for this year. I like Addison this year, and is there any situation where you kind of see this guy's laid out and nobody's has faith in him? Is there anybody?
Yeah, Lamar Jackson. I mean, nobody ever has faith in him. And he basically makes fools out of those guys in every single thing that he's ever done.
Can you see him?
Yeah, I can see him. See you. Yeah,
they're in there.
Yeah,
I'm a big Lamar Jackson guy. My goodness.
Lamar Jackson played hurt throughout the year. His offensive line was hurt. And he had basically his receiving core was, Zay Flowers at that point. I think that, and it was a stodgy offense, still a little bit of a stodgy offense. And part of it was because they didn't have a great offensive line, because Lamar had a hamstring issue, and they couldn't stretch the field vertically sideline to sideline with Lamar's running ability the way that they normally do. Lamar's still tough in the pocket. He's always been. But they all overestimate that stuff. I think Declan Doyle's going to have a good offense. The fact that they looked at Rashad Bateman and said, okay, we still believe in this guy. I know fantasy people don't, but you look at him as a 700, 800-yard receiver possibly who makes big plays, can work over the middle. He can run after the catch. And you put him in an offense where they're going to move him around. And I know people are talking about Jacoby Lane, but Jacoby Lane is a contested catch player who makes flashy one-handed catches, and that looks great on film. But again, we go back to, can he read a defense? And I watched him at USC, and he often ran the wrong routes, made the wrong adjustments, and got his quarterback nearly intercepted on multiple plays.
Yeah, I mentioned this this week. I said that he is a basketball player, as a wide receiver. He's essentially a rebound guy. He catches, but he is so raw. And it is incredibly frustrating when you're lined up in an NFL offense against an NFL defense and watching a raw receiver run the wrong route over and over and over, or not knowing where they're going to be, or not picking up on a blitz or a coverage or anything like that. And you see that a lot on his tape, littered on his tape, actually. So I'm with you on that.
And CJ Stroud, I mean, we talked about him a little bit earlier, but emerging receivers, better offensive line. Every year that he's been in the league, like, I was not a big CJ Stroud, he's awesome type of thing, but I thought he was could be competent and be a good quarterback. And he played very well his first year. Defenses adjusted because that's what they do. And then on top of that, there's been no continuity along that offensive line since the year before CJ Stroud even got drafted. There's been no coaching continuity on top of that. He's had young receivers that he's had to, and that's been kind of no continuity there either. So when you put that all, and no running game. So when you put all that together, it's kind of a Caleb Williams kind of situation, but at least the coaches were a little bit more competent about drawing up a game plan than what happened with Caleb. So, but when you look at his pressure numbers, there's two types of numbers. People think of pressure as blitzes, but we know that blitzes are different than pressures. Blitzes being the design of sending an extra man or two or three or four, and pressures being, here's our base defense. We're not sending anybody, but if we break contain and get into the quarterback's pocket, that's a pressure. Well, when you look at the quarterback production statistics on those two different types of situations, most quarterbacks do well against the blitz unless they're just really bad. And their production isn't that far different than what their overall stats look like, especially in completion percentage, yards per attempt, and touchdowns to interceptions. But when you look at pressure, they're not expecting that their offensive line's going to screw this up or get beaten on these plays. And oftentimes you see completion rates among the top quarterbacks in like the 40%, like 40, 45, 48. It's much worse. Well, CJ Stroud wasn't that bad compared to the other quarterbacks against pressure. It was, against the blitz, I think it was, but pressure, that was where it was rough. Mm-hmm. And I think that we're going to see some improvement out of him as this offense gets a little bit better with a run game. I'm very comfortable with taking him as my quarterback 2 in one quarterback leagues where I can use him as kind of a late round, close to a late rounder, final third of the draft, selection for that. So yeah, I think those are a lot of the guys that I would say. And, I'm still a Stefon Diggs fan. I still think he can play.
I was going to ask you about Stefon Diggs. I was going to ask before we closed out, what's the deal with my boy Stefon? Because I I love him this year. I want to stay away from Jaden Daniels' mom, but other than that, man, I'm all in.
Now, does Stefan know to do that? That's the question that I have.
He does.
Have
No,
to
he
ask.
doesn't.
He
Definitely
probably
doesn't.
does not. No, I don't think he does either.
Mm.
But Stefan's one of those guys that I'm sure we're going to hear stories about, if we already haven't, about just how conceptually skilled he is as a route runner and player, and that he's one of those few guys that you could probably drop in a war zone and have him like pick up things and play well. And there's not a lot of guys like that, and I think he's one of them. So do I think he's going to be a wide receiver 1 this year? No, but can he be a decent wide receiver 2 if everything goes right? Yes, because he's a better route runner than Terry McLaurin. And I think that they can play him inside and out. And they're going to use a lot of 12 personnel, I think, because their wide receiver 3 is some sort of demigorgon of, Luke McCaffrey, Traylon Burks, and Antonio Williams, which means they don't have a wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
So I think Diggs will, as long as Diggs stays healthy, and I think, again, we look at how he plays, I'll give him one more year. Why not?
Yeah, I think their wide receiver 3 this year is Rachaad White, by the way.
Yeah, I'm with you. Or Chig,
Chig.
Yeah, yes. People definitely thought Chig was the answer. I mean, he still could be valuable. I agree, but Diggs
with
going
you
there.
On White.
I'll still take Chig over Likely at cost.
Chris, you let me give me somebody before we get out of here that you see a revival or you're buying or anything. Just give me a player.
Well, I can't say Baker because everybody knows that. I feel that, and as long as he stays healthy, he would be. But it's Baker, and I don't know that he can stay healthy. So if I'm going to give you a revival player, it's going to be Saquon Barkley. He bounces back, at least his top 10 at running back. I think that offense has got still, even without A.J. Brown, there's still enough talent there to produce at a higher clip than they did last season. And I think that they're going to be very, efficient with their targets. Dallas Goedert, somebody that's a great buy still, right? You could get him. I mean, he had an awesome year last year, and he's dropped in drafts.
He's also a free agent next year. I think that he's moving on to a new team at 29 years old. I'm with that.
We've talked about this. He could have a Zach Ertz type research. I don't know if you want to call it a resurgence, but how Zach Ertz went to Arizona and had a couple more seasons. I mean, I totally see that as a possibility for Goddard. So, yeah, Saquon's the one that first comes to mind. I didn't have, a list down or anything like that, but yeah, and that's somebody that I know personally I have drafted a couple of times in startups this offseason. So that was the first one that came to mind.
I've seen it happen, actually.
Yeah, and I just turned down a Saquon and Jefferson for Jamar Chase deal. So
that's not.
Go ahead and
what do you think about that trade? I honestly like that trade. I would probably take Jefferson and Saquon, maybe. Honestly, I think that everyone is really down on Jefferson, but you might get the same ceiling play this year with an extra Saquon attached to it.
I mean, I'm not saying Jefferson's going to score as much as Chase. I don't see that. But
I think I'm still taking Chase, though, is what I'm getting all the way around at. Would you do that, Matt? Would you trade Jefferson and Saquon for Chase?
In a
12 by 11, 0.75 super flex tight end premium.
Yeah. I mean, if I was in a win now situation, I would keep the 2 over the 1.
Yeah, it was right out of a startup. So I'm I would say I'm probably the 4th or 5th best team right now.
If I'm in a long build situation where I just know I'm not really contending, and I'm saving for picks, then I'd still probably take that deal too. If I'm a contender but I still might have a little bit more long-term ways to go. I don't know. I still probably would do it just because. I mean, look, I think Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver in football, and
So do I. Yeah.
But I also think Kyler Murray, even if I think that he's only going to support one of those three players to be fantasy options because he's only done it once in his 7 or 8 year career, he's only done that once, supported more than one fantasy option.
Yeah.
So as much as I like, basically what I believe is going to happen is one of two things: 95 to 99% likely Justin Jefferson's going to be a wide receiver 1, or that 2 to 5% likelihood that Justin Jefferson kicks the shit out of Kyler Murray for skipping him in the progression order and feeding TJ Hawkinson. And then Jordan Addison is going to come off the bench or come across the field from the other side of the field to run down there to help beat down Kyler Murray for totally ignoring him.
He's pulling up with the getaway car. Definitely. He's pulling. He's going to pick up JJ. They're getting out of there, dude.
I am telling you that is, I mean, look, I'm well known for really being hard on Kyler Murray, and I'm rooting for him to finally, and I don't think it's going to be Kevin O'Connell, the quarterback whisperer thing. You can go ahead and put that behind in the same aisle as the crystal candles in the metaphysical football shop. That Kevin O'Connell is the quarterback whisperer.
We can put that to bed, right? We can. That ended last year. We're not going to bring that up again.
There's very few quarterback whisperers, if any. It's a myth, okay? Unless they're a quarterback coach.
I love what Mac Jones is doing over there in San Francisco, though.
Sure, and that's the point. But who passed through there before he got to the crystal shop of Kevin O'Connell? Yes. So Sam did pretty. Sam learned a thing or two, and I can go with that. But this is the thing. Kyler can climb a pocket when he wants to, but he doesn't. He wants to run around, and he wants to make highlight plays, and he won't step up and give you the simple solution. Jackson Dart has Kyler Murray-itis as well, and they do that same thing where it's like you are wearing out your offensive line. You're like a drama queen who basically is creating chaos for your friends and family, when all you needed to do was just find the simple solution and sometimes throw the ball away.
Dump it off. Yes, you occasionally have this amazing thing, but you're wearing your team out and you're not helping your teammates get easy plays. And you're making the defense not have to they're not second guessing conceptually what's going on. They're just like going, okay, he's going to run again. I mean, I know he's going to wear us down a little bit here and there, but we're up by 34. So what does it really matter? And how many games has he won as a starter? And how many playoff seasons has he had as a starter? And why is Jacoby Brissett even though he went 1-11, how did he get Michael Thomas incarnate Michael Wilson have a chance to actually show what he could be, and just stepped off the bench and did it? It's just like if Kyler gets the mindset, I know he can step up in a pocket, but he refuses. Baker wouldn't do that at Cleveland, and that's why he got the boot. He wouldn't do that. And he would take too much time with certain situations. And even his wife said, once he got the boot from Cleveland, he had a wake-up call and realized that maybe he had to approach the game differently and approach his mindset of the game. And I'm happy for Baker. Even as a Browns fan, I'm happy for Baker that he's been able to get to where he is. Because when you watch him in Tampa, he steps up in the pocket now instead of trying to go out the side door. And who played in the same system as Baker, in the same Cliff Kingsbury? Somehow I get hired every year and get paid tons of money and live in my nice white house somewhere out west.
and do photo shoots that I probably charge people for.
We could have just turned this into a Cliff and Kyler hate pod, and everybody would have been on board with it. I think.
I just think it's just a shame. You know, it's just a shame. I think Kyler's a good fantasy option. He's a compelling
he's
fantasy
a garbage
option.
time king.
Yeah, exactly. You know, Blake Bortles would be jealous. You know, but I mean, but he could. I get frustrated with him because he could be a much better overall quarterback than he is
in the NFL. I agree.
Yeah,
and shout out to Blake Bortles though. He won me $800 on what was it? 2000 I don't know when he was 20
2015 16 17
19 I don't know. It was whenever the Jags went to the playoffs and all. What did they lose in the divisional round?
Keenan Cole.
Yes.
By the way, Drew Aller to wet gen touchdown
again, huh? We're in trouble.
I can't wait for my buddy Steve to call me up, and he's going to be, you know, but we know. Come
See how many wet jet claims there are tomorrow.
I know
morning.
this is going to be a hot waiver claim.
People are going to have a wet gen for wet gen. That's for sure.
Like what are you working on, Matt? Tell everybody before we get out of here what you got going on. Segue into that. The wet gen to
sure. I just dropped my August update for the Dynasty Rankings and Projection service I do, where you get projections for every player that I think is going to be on an NFL roster for fantasy purposes. Then I give you a win now set of rankings in a cheat sheet format that's tiered and color coded and gives you some kind of footnotes about what certain things about those players, and then also a long build version. So the short term is more the next 2 years. Long build is more years 3 and 4 down the line, so that I can kind of adjust for that. So you get that. It's in an Excel format. It's $24.95 at mattwaldman.com. When you order it, this is important to know, I wait every 24 hours. I get your emails, and then I send you out the information in terms of how to access it, and then you get access whenever I have an update. I send you an email. So that's how that works. There's the RSP, which is the draft guide, the pre-draft, post-draft guide. I still often use the cheat sheets for that just because I'm more of a long-term guy, and I often feel like we overcorrect on a lot of things. And I've spent so much time studying these guys on film that I find that, you know, most people like the dynasty stuff, and they like the instant updates, and I get that. But I tell people who are new, I go, you're gonna prefer this long term, because when you get the Rico Doddles, the Michael Wilsons, the Parker Washingtons, and players like that I keep hammering on, you know, or players that get hot for 2 weeks and everybody goes, oh, maybe he's great after all. Where do you think you missed on that? And then 3 years later, like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have drafted him. You know, Drew Aller as a good example, probably. Kalen Wedgett, probably a good example of that. Well, Caden, excuse me. We'll see. But I mean, you know, those are good references for multiple years. So you can get either of those at mattwaldman.com. Football guys, you know, rankings updates. I give commentary to about 300 or 400 players. I update those pretty much every day, or at least, you know, and it's not like I'm updating everyone every day. You know, I look at the news and I'm tweaking what I'm seeing with different guys. And so you can read the comments of those guys. And the gut check, you know, I'm approaching my 700th article on that, you know, the 700 weekly article that I've done on that in my time doing this kind of stuff. So, you know, today, like I said, today or tomorrow, you'll see a version of late rounds where I do 10 drafts, and you can see, you know, what I liked, what I hated, and what I actually loved when we got away from ADP a little bit. Next week, I'm sure I'll do either something of players I'm not drafting, or now let's look at all these three different versions of 30 drafts, and who are the guys obviously that I really like. You know, let's take, you know, maybe let's summarize that and do some of that to construct a draft plan. So there'll be things like that going on. And of course the the Feel It or Fuck It podcast, the one with the profane name with the great Bob Harris.
Man, that's a great pod. If you guys haven't seen it
this week,
it is great. So good, man. I love
I appreciate that. We have a good time with it. Bob's an absolute professional, and it's so much fun to corrupt him by calling him up. And he's a good friend of mine, and I've known him for many years. And I looked up to Bob when I first started in this industry. He's not that much older than me, but I like to pretend that he is. But like he was been doing this before I was doing it. And it was one of my first thrills in this industry was to get published in and asked to be a writer in the magazines that he used to do with Emil Cadlick, the late Emil Cadlick. And that was a big kind of milestone for me early on in my career. And Bob and I eventually became friends because he'd start calling me up every year to do work for him. But so one year, we'd have conversations, and they were always these kind of quick, short little conversations ending with "I love you, goodbye," just hanging up on each other. But they were lots of cursing and lots of like quick takes about things. And I just thought, I want to do a show like this. Like I absolutely want to do a show like this. And it was fun because Bob was kind of like, I don't know if we let the toothpaste out of the tube for me, I don't know if I'm going to be able to bring it back in because I'm doing all this work on Sirius and I'm getting paid, to do that work.
He's going to slip up, man. He's going to slip up.
Yeah. So the fact that he was generous enough to give it a try and take the risk and, has made it a lot of fun. And so it's a great show. I do that. Brandon Angelo and I do a show on, every other week. And Brandon is a trainer of, high-end athletes. A lot of them are NFL or college football players. He really knows the stuff about injuries. He knows the game of football. We have some really compelling conversations, and he has his own service of work, Angelo's Analysis, that is really worthwhile with film study and metrics. And then there's Adam Harstead, the FSWA 2024 FSWA Writer of the Year. I have him on during the season every other week. Usually it's every other week. And Adam's a brilliant guy. Talks a lot about dynasty strategy and uses modeling, looks at analytics, but he's more of a modeling guy, which is a different type of thing. And he weaves a lot of academic, historic, philosophical, psychological, concepts and distills them into strategy for football. And I just laugh because like Adam's a very straightforward guy and I love him to death. He's one of the smarter people I know. And I remember when we were first going to do a podcast, like he's generally the type of guy that you talk to and he's like, yeah, no, yeah, okay. And then if you ask him about a subject that he's interested in, he'll talk to you about the subject. So like I remember thinking to myself, I don't know how this podcast is going to go with having him on the air, but he can literally he can go longer than I can and be more compelling than me, which is, I know is a bit of a feat when it comes to going long with stuff, but he can weave a story that's compelling and very helpful. And so we cover the dynasty and also like kind of football history spectrum. So those are the podcasts that I've got going on and all the work I do. And I appreciate you asking.
Yeah, man, you are always cooking. I've had Angelo and Adam on here. Angelo's been on quite a few times, actually. I think that Angelo, actually, you might have been on before. I don't know how it happened, but I think I got with Angelo through you, or you through Angelo, through Angelo. I don't know what happened, but Angelo's great, man. Always good. Adam, you're right though. He does talk, and that pod that we did was 2.5 hours that I had, and it was just me and him talking for 2.5 hours, and I'd go to the bathroom so bad. I was like, I gotta get out of here, dude. I gotta.
But he's so much fun, and what's funny is like we have a little inside baseball with football guys. I'll just share this. Is like everybody gets along there very well, but we had Jason Wood, who's a terrific analyst. I often hear from people that they like to read Jason and I back to back because Jason's the color inside the lines guy who is going to give you like a very good, clear understanding of how, what the consensus type of view is and kind of brush away high risk type of stuff. And he's a very good fantasy player. And then they like to read me because I'm like, yeah, fuck that. So like we're kind of a good foil back and forth, and we often argue with each other about stuff very well. But he's a fun guy because he talks a lot of trash, and he's a fun person to like have on staff for that reason too. Very hard worker and very good analyst. And we joke that Adam's Jason Wood's little brother who trolls him like just consistently.
Yeah.
Like the only person that he like consistently gets that Jason consistently gets trolled is Adam doing it. So it's fun.
I love that. Chris, your dog almost made it the whole pod, man. It was so close.
Almost. I think she's hungry.
Yeah. Send us off, though. Tell everybody what you dropped the video today. Tell everybody where to find it.
Yeah, over on Dynasty Rewind, we dropped the Birdhouse training camp battles week 3, and we discussed some Minnesota Vikings offense with Kyler at the helm. We got into the Denver running back room and other rooms as well we discussed. And that's our series for the month of August. So we'll have week 4 coming out next week. And of course, Mock Draft Monday 28.0 this coming Monday.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, so we're cooking
mock draft all off season.
Yeah, we were going to end it, and we're just going to keep it going. So we are dropping pods almost every day next week. So you got to stay tuned. Find us over on Dynasty Rewind. Find us over here on Dynatize. A lot cooking. Matt, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you so much, and it's always a pleasure, man. You were saying you looked up to Bob. I've always looked up to you, and I think I've told you that many times where you pretty much inspired me to get into content. So I really appreciate you taking your time and joining us today. And it's always a pleasure, man. I could probably just sit here as I usually do and just like let you cook. And it's the best.
Well, it's nice to see you grinding the way you guys are. And, you know, and being as busy and putting out the quality of content that you guys are putting out. So good on y'all.
I appreciate you, Matt. Chris, I appreciate you. Everybody joining us tonight. We'll catch you guys next week. Thank you.